Good evening, LowDown Nation. Tonight is the LowDown with Matt, episode 21, and it is my distinct pleasure to have with me Mr. Luke Galloway and Mr. Brett Batson, better known to the world as the Novanauts. How are you doing tonight, gentlemen?
Doing good.
Great. How about yourself?
Thanks for having us.
I cannot complain. Like I was telling you guys beforehand, I've been excited about this all week. Really been looking forward to chatting it up with you guys. So we'll go ahead and get on with the show. And the most obvious question, and the one that we'll start with, is how long have you guys been playing music individually and collectively?
Yeah, so we're super pumped to be here. Thanks for having us. Brett and I have been playing music now for the majority of our life, I would say.
So it's about nine is when I took my first musical journey and finally got my parents to allow me to buy a drum set, or allowed me to have a drum set in the house.
Yeah, I think I was 10 or 11 when I started taking guitar lessons. I actually started on bass guitar around that time, and then Brett and I met, 4 years later, which is crazy to me to think that we were 15 when we started playing together in a variety of different, projects. But yeah, so pretty early on.
Very cool. Very cool. So in both of your musical journeys, have you ever taken lessons of any sort, or are you guys pretty much self-taught? How has that gone?
Well, I took lessons one time. It was one 30-minute lesson after I had already kind of become a drummer, if you will. And I was like, my parents were like, we want him to learn. He wants to learn how to get better. And it lasted about 30 minutes. And I was like, yeah, that's not for me. And so I kind of just learned through listening. I play by ear. I learned how to read music later in life when I started learning how to play the trombone and stuff like that. So it was a short-lived experiment with teachers, but I also had a brother who was about 4.5, 5 years older, and he was always interested in drums and was in drumline, and so he taught me a lot of the basis. He taught me my first beat, and so I owe a lot to Brandon Batson. Shout out. And my parents for not throwing me through the window when I would play drums during the day.
What about you, Luke?
Yeah, so when I was in elementary school, I lived in England, and I don't have an accent because I had American parents and went to American schools over there. But they hired this lovely British man named Andy Chamberlain. I still remember him to this day. And he would come to the house, our little country cottage, and he would sit with me and teach me how to play guitar. And he did that for, I would say, probably like 6 months. And after that, I was kind of hooked, off to the races, learning my own stuff. He taught me the basics, like, building up finger strength, how to read, chord charts, basic guitar tablature, and how to basically, one of the most important things he taught me was how to find the root of scales and fit scales to songs. Like, what's a major scale, what's a minor scale, pentatonic. I remember that exercise was one that really opened a lot of doors for me. And I would just sit there and solo over songs, even if I didn't know the chord structure. And he he was a great teacher, because he was one of those teachers that just showed me some tools and opportunities and let me kind of run with it. he wasn't like super strict about, oh, you got to play like this. So yeah.
Have you managed to keep in touch with him over the years, or?
Yeah, he, it was a while back. He like connected with me on the internet, but since then we haven't really talked much. But yeah, we have touched base once or twice in the past like 20 years.
That's very cool. Very cool. So, aside from guitar and bass, and in your case, Brett, drums, do you guys play any other instruments?
Yeah, I personally I play drums, trombone. So I was
Sorry.
a huge fan of ska. Back in the day, I was a band specifically. Was a huge fan of a band called Five Iron Frenzy, and so yep. And I remember that was one of my first real concerts. Was going to see them. I think at a Baptist church in Greenville, where I was born, where I hail from, Greenville, South Carolina. It was Brushy Creek Baptist Church, I think, and it was them, Reliant K, and a band called Ace Troubleshooter.
Oh yeah,
and I was like, when I get into middle school, I have to learn how to play brass. And seeing as my middle school band teacher knew that I already played drums, she wouldn't let me play drums. She said, you need to learn another instrument because you're already learning how to play drums. You've got that going on. So I'm going to teach you how to play something else alongside that. And I said, and I honestly, I was upset at the time, but it was one of the greatest gifts she probably could have given me, because I think seeing music from different sides is very important, regardless if you're 1,000% proficient in those sides or not. I'm learning how to play bass right now is another thing that but those two I would say I am proficient in, and hopefully soon the bass guitar. So it seems like a nice transition to another instrument.
very cool. Yeah, I mean, it kind of makes sense with you being a drummer, to learn the other end of the rhythm section.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm a converted guitarist myself. I played guitar off and on the better part of my life, and about 4 years ago, my son took up guitar and absconded with all my guitar gear. So he and my wife surprised me with a bass that Christmas, and I had never touched a bass, let alone tried to play one.
Yep.
And I started noodling around on it, and I discovered fairly quickly that I'd been a bass player all these years and just never knew it. So,
Nice.
Yep. And that's one thing we were, to your point, I picked up in the studio. Like, I've always thought about it, but we were in the studio last month, and I was playing with the bass before we were tracking before Luke was tracking bass, and I was like, why not? Like, Guitar-a-thon at Guitar Center's coming up. Like, they've got some really good deals going on. I said, why not? I'm gonna do it. And so I pulled the trigger, and now I have this little guy right here.
oh, nice.
So now I'm officially a bass owner, and hopefully soon a guitar player.
Nice. So, tell me, each of you, I guess, about your current gear and live setup. What do you play? What do you play through? Any effects, pedal boards, that kind of thing?
Yeah, great question. So we have done a lot of experimenting over the years as a duo on how to capture kind of our the fullness of our sound in a live environment. These days, we're really blessed to have a lot of technological tools to help with that. And we started off actually using a sampler on stage to help with some of the, synthesized elements and loops and things like that when we play. But now it's a lot different. So the bare bones of the group is me on guitar and vocals and Brett on the drums. Mm-hmm. And then to build up around that for the live show, I actually have a lot of this stuff right here with me. We have this lovely rig here, which is a PreSonus Studio Live and PreSonus audio interface in a seismic audio splitter. And that allows us to reamp signals from our tracks. So since I'm playing 6-string treble guitar, we'll call it, we're reamping bass. Synthesizer lines are going in through that. And then for the guitar setup, we have the Line 6 Veta 2, which is a fantastic, super loud combo amp. I think this one was made in the mid-2000s, and it was probably Line 6 best amp that they've made so far, at least as far as what we use it for. And the cool thing about that is because we're running tracks, I can send a MIDI out from the PreSonus interface to do patch changes, effect changes, everything live. That frees me up to sing and play, because there's a lot of changes in our music. There's a lot of vocal lines that need some attention. So I don't use a pedal board at all. My footprint on stage is a mic stand. That's it, which is fun.
Get to run around.
Yeah, I'm wireless. I use all Line 6 wireless stuff. And I really like focusing on what it is that I am bringing in, which is the performance. And I don't want to think about changing the pedal board and, looking down, making sure I hit it on time. Right. So the Line 6 allows us to do that, because we have the PreSonus Studio One software sending MIDI signals to change it all in time with what Brett's doing on the drums, and then our synth tracks and our bass reamped. That's what we're doing right now. And as far as guitars go, I used to play Eastwood guitars, but I ended up, when I went to study for my day job, I sold a bunch of stuff, and I ended up getting to replace that, because I wasn't gigging at the time. I got a Squier Mustang Bullet. It's probably the best $200 guitar money can buy. I mean, I have played so many different guitars, and when we go to the studio, sometimes I use this, sometimes I use these US made Fenders, sometimes I use Ibanez, Gibsons, but this little $200 Mustang is probably the best value. I mean, and I'm not sponsored by Squier. They're not paying me to say
Shout out Squier, Fender.
People at shows are always like, oh, nice Squier guitar. Oh, interesting. And I'm like, what? And then they compliment the tone and they compliment the sound. They're like, wow, y'all sounded great. And I'm like, it's not about the brand. It's about, how you use the tool to express yourself, starting with the mind and the body. And anyway, I'm going to get philosophical here about gear.
Hey, go
Brett is much more of a gear person. And then for a lot of our keys and stuff, we use whatever our producer has in the studio. He's got Fender Rhodes. He's got a bunch of software synths. He's got some Moog stuff. So we're pretty blessed to have a lot of tools at our disposal, and we're slowly building things up. We use in-ear monitors, wireless in-ear monitors as well, to stay in sync. And that's the basic setup. I could diagram it all out. I could nerd out with you on this if you wanted to hear more. But Brett,
A whole episode on just Novanauts gear.
Yeah.
Maybe we'll get you guys back on for like a gear nerd spotlight or something.
Yeah,
that would actually be fun.
That would be fun.
Because like I haven't played a single show with someone who uses MIDI automation for their guitar effects. Mm-hmm. Now, I imagine when you're in the big time, you have a guitar tech and a whole team of people making sure that the changes happen seamlessly.
Yeah.
Like, that's different. But for our scale, I've talked to people who have a lot of really advanced rigs, but they're still staring at their feet, making their changes in between songs. And I'm like, dude, it's taken away from the experience. Anyway, that's my own thought. So.
Right. I love listening to you talk about the gear because I love gear but I don't have a whole ton to talk about. I'm a simple man. I'm a simple drummer. I have my main kit is a SJC custom kit that I bought in 2005 with money I earned from my first job at Firehouse Subs. And I gave every single paycheck to my dad, and he was like, "Do you want any money? Like, do you?" And I was like, "No." I was like, "I've got a $2,500 drum set to pay off. Here you go." When I'm 14 years old, and so I did that and saved it all up, and I still have that kit. It is beautiful. It is a maple. Custom maple kit. Sizes are a little early 2000s and probably won't go this way going forward, but I have a 22 by 20 kick drum, 12 by 7 rack tom, 16 by 14 floor tom, and then I typically use a 6.5 or bigger snare drum, depth by 14, and I do have I use a Ludwig Black Beauty, and I also use a SJC custom snare that I bought secondhand. Right here, there's the guy. Show him the custom badge. That's one of my favorite parts of it.
That's cool.
It's like a.
He's endorsed. Brett is endorsed by SJC. Shout out to SJC.
Yes, I am indeed. So I am on their artist roster, and I am looking at building a kit right now with them. So I love that kit. Love it to death. Maple all the way. That is a mahogany snare with maple re-rings, which sounds... Lee, our producer, says it sounds better than any snare. I brought the Black Beauty and I brought that, and he said, hands down, we're going with the SJC custom snare. I probably prefer Tama hardware, though I'll use whatever works. Vic Verth sticks. I've been all over the place with sticks all my life. Vader, ProMark, but I always come home to Vic Verth, and I'm a huge fan of Zildjian. I've had Sabian, I've played other stuff, and I've played Istanbul. I've played all these different kits or different companies, but Zildjian just the tonality of them, and each one has its own character. And they've been doing it. They're the longest running company that is still actually working. I mean, they were made in the 1600s. They were started in the 1600s, the Zildjian company. And so very, very cool history with them. But right now I'm using a 24-inch K Light Ride, a 19-inch K Custom Hybrid on my right crash, a 17-inch K Sweet Crash on my left side, and a 14 1/4 K Custom hybrid hats. I also have a 21-inch K Crash Ride Brilliant that I love, but most of what we do doesn't need a third crash cymbal unless I absolutely want it. But yeah, and then to this day, I will die on this hill. Pork pie drum thrones. This is the best thing I've ever sat on. I'm sitting on one right now. Hands down. That was not product placement. That just happened to be exactly lined up.
Hey.
So it sounds like a lot. It sounds like a lot of stuff, but a lot of what we are doing is just trying to make things as efficient as possible to help us have fun performing these somewhat complicated alt rock songs. When we need a little extra oomph, we reach for some tech. But I think as we go through this more and more, we are recognizing that this band is built on guitar, vocals, and drums. And if we forget that, then the music starts to reflect this kind of weird in between space. But when we come back to that and we use the gear and the technology that we have available to us to enhance that core, things feel more at home, feel more comfortable, feel more fun to play. To be honest,
it's one of our favorite words, comfy. Does it feel comfy?
Mhm.
Does it pass the tummy test?
The tummy
Yeah.
We could go on for days about how much we trust the tummy test. I feel like the tummy test is where we go.
Yeah.
What we use to when we're writing music, when we're making decisions about the band, when we're making business decisions, when we're making life decisions. I mean, it's infiltrated. It started with the band, but it's infiltrated into my everyday life. And does it feel good? Does the song feel good to play? Is it fun to play? I I know there are acts and artists out there who play songs, and I'm like, knowing technically how drums work, that has to be so much anxiety to play that song live. Like, and you'll hear drummers saying like, God, that song is just like a monster to play live. I want to play things that feel comfy, because I believe when you are comfortable, you're able to express yourself through the instrument and through the music more than just being that robotic. I need to make sure I'm exactly playing exactly what needs to be played. Every time we play, I'm like, I play something different, or I play a different thing or here. And you have to realize, like, and we've talked about this before, because I beat myself up sometimes. I'm like, I didn't play that exactly right. And he's like, each performance is different. It's a new chance. It's a chance to play your music and to express yourself through that music. And the songs are good, and it doesn't matter if it's exactly the same beat every single time. If you don't hit that kick drum on the one E and of whatever, like it's first and foremost, are you having fun? Because
Exactly.
if you're not having fun, no one else is ever going to be able to have fun or be receptive of it. And I think that's one thing that we've really tapped into, that people, Luke, I'm sure you agree, like, people always say, you guys are just having so much fun. Like, we can tell you're having fun. And that's all we want, is for, to bring people together in a shared space, to have a shared experience, and to listen to good songs that for us feel good to play live, and for them to receive in a live environment. And and that's a big part of our message is community and bringing that community together, and 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 to make sure that we are joining together as fans of music, as musicians, and building up the music scene, and creating these spaces for us to thrive, because we thrive most when we're doing life together, and we thrive best when we are injecting the things into our life that fuel us. And for a lot of us, it's music, and for us, it's live music and playing live. But
Absolutely.
it's the connection with people that matters. It's community in general that matters in this world, and we don't have enough of it. And I think that's something that is a goal of ours as a band, is to provide community through what we know how to do best, which is rock out and love each other and love other people. I mean,
Well said. Well said.
Absolutely. Playing music, there's no mistakes. There's just undocumented features.
yeah, I love
So,
that. I love that.
so one question I'm going to ask, and it's funny, a lot of these I've done with bass players, and I always ask, how often do you change strings? And it's funny to ask that to bass players, because bass strings are not cheap. You have to practically take out a second mortgage to restring your bass.
Yep.
So
Yep.
so how often do you guys change strings?
So I would say for bass, thankfully we don't have to do it all that much because we are reamping. So it's
Right.
like we play it in the studio on Lee's nice equipment, and then it's forever enshrined in our tracks.
Yep.
But for guitars, I mean, I'm changing strings usually once a month. I mean, depending on how bad things are looking and feeling. But it's really like I play elixirs, so I get a lot of longevity out of them. Some people like complain about the coding somehow getting into the tone, and I'm like, I don't notice that. I just know that I don't have to buy strings as much as you probably. It's but,
Nano or poly?
so I like the Nano Web. I play Elixir Nano Web 10s on all my guitars right now, at least the ones that are suited for 10 gauge. I tried 11s for a little while, but little powerful, little like tight for me, I guess I should say. And then nines are just a little too slinky, especially playing a short scale guitar, because Mustangs are actually pretty short. But yeah, I would say once a month is probably a safe bet for how often I change strings. Brett, how often do you change your drum heads or drumsticks?
Well, that is a funny story. I had a person that I respect very much so tell me one time, if you take care of your drums, if you keep them in tune, and they still sound good, why change the heads? I don't. I honestly have subscribed to that. I would change them all the times, but as you all know, it is not cheap to change strings or drum heads. It's gonna cost you easily $250 to change your drum heads, top and bottom on everything. And so I have not changed my drum heads since 2000 and probably 2015. So almost a decade. I have changed snare heads. Snare heads I will change when they wear out. When that coating starts to chip on the top, that's when I start to notice a difference in feel and tone to me personally. So snare heads I change in and out probably. I would say how much we play, maybe every 3-4 months, and then as far as everything else, it still sounds good, man. I don't know what else to say. If Remo wants to give me a sponsorship one day and throw me free drum heads all the time, I'll change them every week. But it's I play Remo Emperor Emperor Smooth Whites. So I absolutely love them. They've lasted a long time. People still compliment my drum set when I play it live. So keep them rolling.
Well, what we're going to get into next are what are your musical influences. Before we get into that, I'm going to flip over to the Instagram tab and see if anybody's making any comments or such over there. Doesn't look like it. We've got several people over there, but nobody's really saying much at this point. But so moving on now, what are some of your musical influences?
They range pretty widely, I would say. I mean, I grew up listening to a lot of different styles, but when I first got into playing music, I was really into like 90s alternative, early 2000s alternative rock. I think my first favorite band was Foo Fighters. And that was like, Foo Fighters, Nirvana, that kind of style at the beginning. And then I started to get into kind of heavier music. I was a huge fan of Metallica, and then I got into like extreme metal stuff for a while. And then as I started to kind of take a step back and be like, okay, I'm a little tired of blast beats and guttural breakdowns, which I had a good time with those. Don't get me wrong. I still appreciate that music. I got really into like more experimental stuff. Like I had a buddy, Mason Lusk, who is a co-writer on a lot of our songs, actually, who introduced me to Radiohead's Kid A album way back in the day. And I was like, this is like, I don't even know what to make of this. And then I got really into Radiohead, and he introduced me to DJ Shadow. And then when Mute Math came around, I was like, this is like alternative rock with DJ Shadow and like a little bit of electronic like going on. And that was probably one of the biggest influences on the type of music that we're playing now. And sprinkle in, being in England and all the big bands at that time in England were folks like Muse and The Killers and early Coldplay. Oasis was huge when I was over there. So like this kind of hodgepodge of rock and alternative and experimental influences, and electronic dance music was like everything that was on the pop music stations over there, like 10 to 15 years before it was popular as much as it is now in the States. So things like Armin van Buuren and Tiesto and dude, I think Eiffel 65 was the very first CD that I bought, like on my own with like my allowance. These are like getting really back into the musical influences. But yeah, it kind of ranged from different styles of rock. Also a huge classic rock fan, Led Zeppelin, the Beatles. I'm actually going to see the Rolling Stones on June the 7th. Yeah, so coming up soon.
I'm jealous.
Yeah, and just a bunch of different things. I'm just a fan of good music that is made with authenticity and desire to create. And I think I over the years have, at least I like to think that I've developed somewhat of a sniff test for like, this just doesn't feel or sound authentic, and it doesn't feel like they're really saying anything true to them. And because there's a lot of ability to create music with technology these days, but that doesn't necessarily mean that it is saying anything. And this is one of our chances to say something in the world. I don't know. I could be naive with a lot of these things I'm saying, but these were a lot of my influences. And of course, I have to shout out like the early 2000s emo pop punk time period as well. So I just about hit every like major rock movement over the past 20 years.
Yeah, and like I was saying earlier, a lot of my early influences were punk and ska bands, specifically a band called Five Iron Frenzy. I remember that was one of my first shows ever, going to Brushy Creek Baptist Church in Greenville, South Carolina, where I'm from, and seeing Reliant K, Ace Troubleshooter, and Five Iron Frenzy, and it was I knew then that that's what I wanted to do one day, was to give people that experience, to foster that for people, and I just knew that was where I belonged. I don't know how else to put it other than that is, when we get up on stage and I get behind that drum set, that's home. That's where I belong. But a lot of my influences started out with, punk and ska. And my dad is a worship pastor for church. Has been a worship pastor my whole life, and a barber. Shout out, Dad. So a lot of my influences were like Christian rock bands like Reliant K, Five Iron Frenzy, even getting into some Stephen Curtis Chapman and and that kind of, I would consider him like kind of the alt rock of the Christian scene back then, and he's still killing it. I love Stephen Curtis Chapman. But I would say recently, a lot of what Luke said, that kind of sharpened my interest were bands like Mute Math, Muse. I personally probably lean more towards the harder side of our. He loves it too, but I'm more of a metal guy. So I love August Burns Red. I love Norma Jean was one. Oh gosh, their first album with Josh and was one of my first interests into the hard rock world, and I'll never forget listening to that first one and being like, yeah, no, I like this. And so that Norma Jean and Under Oath were kind of my early 2000s intro into the harder side of things. I'm going to see Under Oath, and I got VIP tickets to their 20th anniversary tour of They're Only Chasing Safety. So I'm very stoked for that meet and greet, all that. But
ask Aaron about future self.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But I love everything from singer songwriter. I'm a huge fan of a guy named Medium Build right now. Love a guy. Love him. Go check out Medium Build. I love a pop artist out of England right now called Holly Humberstone. Love her. I love I don't even know how to say her last name, but Lizzie McAlpine, or so love her stuff. Um, but the biggest thing that I've realized is that I just love music, and
Hmm.
if it speaks to me, I'm gonna listen to it, and I don't. I that doesn't matter if it's a lot of people are like, oh, I don't like country. I'm like, well, you just haven't heard the right stuff.
Exactly.
There's good music, and it just so happens to fall into their country, you know, umbrella, if you will. But a lot of times, I think when we talk about like our influences and stuff like that, we cling on and we hold on to the things that speak to us. And for me, it's just good songwriting, that you know has intent and isn't just recycled, uh, you know work. I mean, a lot of what we hear nowadays, just in all aspects of music, just kind of sounds the same. And so I think it's one of those things where you just kind of grab onto what feels good and ride it home, because that's what music's all about. It's not about other people, what they're listening to. It's what speaks to you. And music gets me through my life, and uh, I only hope that people find whatever type of music gets them through theirs, because it's a salve that cannot be matched, in my opinion. A medicine that no doctor can prescribe. It's life. It's my lifeblood.
Absolutely, I completely get that. So Brett has already answered this question, but Luke, what was the very first concert you ever attended as a fan?
Oh, this is great. So, my parents are from Tennessee. Though we lived in England, my dad was in the military. The first concert that I went to, like rock concert, was the reunion tour for Leonard Skinner.
Oh, cool.
And I will say that it left a mark on me. I was like, what in the world? I knew like no Leonard Skinner, but that whole summer I listened to so much Leonard Skinner. It was great. But that was like the first
Don't
big.
let him fool you. That's all he listens to. Skinnerd.
I danced to Simple Man at my wedding with my mom, so that shows something. But yeah, that was the first concert that I went to, like big rock show.
I will have to say, Five Iron Frenzy probably wasn't the first one. I would, if I can go back in my mind capsule, it would probably, one of the earliest like big shows I remember was DC Talk.
Nice.
I want to say it was the Supernatural tour. But I had been a DC Talk fan. Oh, I mean, that's a band right there. That was one of the first bands
Oh, yeah.
I ever like listened to and loved, and was interested in not just the music but the people behind it. Toby Mac,
Right.
Michael, you know, Kevin Max. I mean, those were my heroes growing up. So I missed a big opportunity, but that's besides the point. DC Talk, I would not be here without you.
Very cool. Very cool. Yeah, it's funny. Several years ago, my wife and I went to see a concert locally here in Atlanta, and it was a really interesting blend. It was Skinnerd, Charlie Daniels, and Michael W. Smith. It was.
M Dub
Yeah.
Smith, man. Oh man, I know. I've been to several Michael W. Smith shows. So growing up with a dad who was very into the the choral music productions of all that time. We were very entrenched in that world of Michael W. Smith, and he wrote so many, great songs, not just Christian songs, just great songs in general
Oh,
of
yeah.
that time period. And so, yeah, Lord, I could go on forever about that.
Absolutely. So, have in the course of your musical journeys, have either of you had a chance to meet any of your musical heroes?
Yeah, not as many as maybe I would like so far. We'll see what happens in the future, but I saw Mute Math when they played at Variety Playhouse in Atlanta back. Oh man, I want to say it was like after they had just released their first full length album, and they were supporting it, and they just hung out next to the tour bus after the show, and they were super down to earth and awesome to talk to. And then I connected with Roy, their bass player, on MySpace not too long after that, and was like, how do you do synthesizers with rock music? And he talked to me about like click tracks and MIDI. And anyway, he was like super gracious to like just chat about music. And that was one of the most impactful kind of meetups that I've had. I've met Tim McTeague from Under Oath at Cornerstone Fest. That was fun. There's a bunch of other folks that I'm just blanking on right now, but yeah, I thankfully never run into the experience where I meet someone and they're just like total disappointment. Thankfully, people have been really cool.
The whole never meet your heroes.
Yeah, I was going to say that. That's what they say, but yeah.
Yeah, and as far as me, I've met. I'm trying to think back on it, but I did get to meet up with August Burns Red. One of my best friends was the bass player and singer for a band called Silent Planet, and Thomas Freckleton, shout out baby, and they were playing with them, and I had tickets before I even I was like, I bought them, and then I was like, oh, Silent Planet, yeah, sweet. So they went on tour with August Burns Red, and I got to meet them and hang out. And I have a tattoo. My first tattoo is some lyrics by August Burns Red that says, "The victim in me is dead," which is, I think, something I try to live by, as we all try to play the victim and that blame other people for our circumstances, and sometimes that is the case, but most of the time, if not the majority of the time, 99% of the time, it's us blaming other people, and we can't control the things that happen around us. We can only control how we react to them. And
Absolutely.
So it's just kind of that thing. But I met them, and then I met the guys from Five Iron Frenzy multiple times, and I'm sure it's one of those things you think back on. It's like you may have gone up to a merch table or anything, but those are the bands I remember actually, speaking to for a prolonged period of time, not just a sign this, please.
Yeah,
I would love that. But yeah, but I will have to say that most bands that we played with recently are very, and I think that's something that the scene needs to get back to is people interacting with people, bands interacting with their fans. And I've seen a lot of that lately with that. We played with a band called Saul, and the first thing they did once they got off stage, they went and put their equipment away, and then went out to the merch table, and I think that's important. I think you take that time, no matter how long it takes after a show. You might be tired, ready to go to the bus or your home or the hotel room, but taking that time to create relationship is something that the scene needs badly, but also human beings in general.
Yeah,
we need each other.
Sure.
If we're not doing this life together, if we're not helping each other, what the heck are we doing, man? It's pointless.
Absolutely. I've got to say, you guys are really why I'm doing this. This is just I am just having the time of my life talking to both of you. This is just so cool.
Thank you. Blast.
Question for you, Luke. I noticed the dog earlier. Was that a dachshund?
Yes.
Yeah.
Winston.
Got Winston and Bentley, 2 miniature dachshunds with us. I don't know if they're going to make it on the screen, but I had to jump off because Winston bolted out the back door barking at somebody, and I had to go get him. So I was like, "Oh, this is perfect timing."
Yeah.
We've had miniature dachshunds. I'm going to try to see if I can show. There he is. He's sleeping.
Oh yeah.
Little Bean.
And then there's Bentley.
Oh.
We've had miniature dachshunds for about a decade now. Love those dogs. Oh, look at that.
Oh, little buddy.
Yeah, this is Lady. My wife calls her my Velcro dog. She basically keeps me. I was telling Brett, I'm fortunate to be able to work from home, and she is usually snoozing in my lap during the workday. Oh, is that yours, Brett?
Yeah, that is Bailey. That is that I call her my baby. My dad will correct you. That is his third child. That is his daughter. He was the dad who was like, I don't know about getting this dog. I just don't know if we're. And now it's his best friend. And if he's watching, I know for a fact this is true. She's probably in the will ahead of us. But she is a Brittany Spaniel, and my brother lives in Queens, New York, and he had a friend who had a situation, and he was joining the FBI, and he just couldn't be there. He was going to be gone for months at a time, and he wanted to go to a good home, and we had just lost another Brittany Spaniel, same exact color, the red and the white, and we lost her during the pandemic. She went to, the Rainbow Bridge in her sleep, and a few months later, I think it's that Christmas, Bailey came to live with us, and it was because we were like, we'll never get another dog. We can't. Nobody will ever. And now Bailey's the baby. So, short little story of personal, but love that dog.
Oh yeah, and out of curiosity, also Luke, what were you sipping on earlier? I'm actually sipping some tea out of a merch mug.
Nice.
I love that mug.
Thank you.
I was having some water. I had a margarita earlier, and then I was just filling my More Than Monday mug. So I volunteer leading a college group at Buckhead Church, and this is kind of their slogan about the days that we meet are on Mondays. So they gave us this as a gift, but I was just drinking some water out of it.
Nice.
Staying
Just
hydrated.
yeah, yeah, keeping the mouth from turning to cotton. But yeah, I was actually sipping this tea. This is Seven Essence. It's actually a friend of ours over in India,
Oh, cool.
a guy named Bubble, and he makes the best tea. This stuff is autumn sangria, and um, and he's actually a rocker. He actually started off as a friend of my wife's, and he and I have bonded over music, and so it's really cool the connections you make through all this stuff sometimes.
Totally.
That's so cool. Show in India, Luke. We'll go
I
see.
I would love to do it. You know, like honestly, I feel like Europe and Asia rock music. It's where it's at right now.
Right.
But hey, I love America. Proud to be an American, but I would love to do some shows overseas, man. I would love it. So
no doubt.
Germany. Apparently, we had some people from Germany at our show
Oh,
at the
yes.
Masquerade, and they were like, I mean, they just kept going on and on. And whenever you hear somebody, you're like, oh, thank you, I appreciate that. But like, they just kept going on. They were like, no, I mean it. You guys would be huge in Germany. Like right now, this kind of music is like, and they just kept going on and on. Like you just keep trying to say, oh, but they were just really like genuinely so excited that we were playing music. They were just so excited for us, like that we were getting to do that, and that they love the type of music, and that's the kind of connections that you get to when you go out and you just talk to people after a show. It's like you just these random awesome human souls that inhabit this earth alongside of you. Like that's why I always say it's so important to. That's the most important thing. We need each other in this world.
Absolutely. Well, we're coming up on an hour. If you guys have a drop dead time that you have to get off, I completely get that. But I mean, I'm open to continue this for a while. But I was going to say, if either of you need to drop off, I would definitely like to have you guys back on at a future point, because this has just been awesome.
Oh, we're excited to be here, and we're glad that you're doing this, and we're thankful for you. And I'm down to continue for a little longer, maybe till about 9:30 or so.
Okay.
Yeah,
that's
I
great.
mean, I
That's
can
great.
stay for as. I should be able to. I don't have anything on the calendar. I'm gonna get something to drink real quick though.
Okay. Well, what I'm going to do real quick, because we're fixing to get into talking about the band itself. I was going to actually play a short snippet of you guys so that people that aren't familiar with the Novanauts have a feel for what you guys sound like. So I'm going to actually share my screen and just play a clip that I found on YouTube.
Go for it.
Yeah. This is just like a minute clip of you guys playing at Smith's Old Bar in Atlanta, and we'll just go ahead and start that up.
Why don't you cry to some more? Why don't you cry to me? Why don't you lie to some more? Why don't you lie to me? We play the roles we play. We're so distracted. No longer born today is what I'm after.
I have to do it.
Nice.
Anyway, I had to. This is so fun.
Had to
Very
hit him with
cool.
it. Had to hit him with
Absolutely. Absolutely. So, so it sounds like you guys have known each other since you were kids, but tell me about the whole Novanauts thing. How long has Novanauts been a thing? Where did the name come from? That kind of thing.
Yeah, so Novanauts in its current iteration started in May of 2020. The Novanauts before started in like 2010 for a few months as I was getting kind of wrapping up a bunch of writing I was doing for another band called Calvin Nova that I was playing in for like 3 or 4 years prior to Novanauts. But then we took a break for a long time playing, this style of music. And so I like to think that, in total, we're still actually pretty new. Even though we've been around for quite some time, we released our first song in 2010. It's not like we've been going since 2010.
Right.
We really haven't been performing live consistently since August of 2023. So when you put it into that perspective, like we've been writing and recording and doing all these things throughout the years, but as Novanauts, like as you know it right now, and as people know it right now, it's really just been the past few years, to be quite honest. So
Yeah,
Very cool.
It was literally the pandemic that brought us back together. We, I was sitting there thinking, what? I mean, we were all thinking, what's the world? What's happening? We don't know. Like, and so he was finishing medical school, and I was living off the government's dime for a while because I was not essential, and I had a lot of time on my hands, and I all the tragedy and loss aside, I thrived during that time because I got to spend 8 hours a day in my studio playing music, and he literally hit me up, was like, you want to get the band back together? And I mean, we hadn't talked in a decade. I mean, like we'd maybe once or twice in 10 years. And it was, and when I tell you, it was like we had never been apart. Like that's true friendship, and I mean that. Like it was like we had seen each other yesterday, and we were talking just like it was 2010 or 2005 or 4 when we first met each other. I mean, it really is one of those things where you realize that the connections you have in this world are what matter.
Oh, absolutely.
And finding true, genuine connections is rare, but when you find them, you know them. You don't have to guess. And so we got back together, and we put a bunch of songs, that I don't know how many were brand new, but most of them were songs that we had either planned on playing or were playing in 2010.
We're just now getting to the new stuff.
Yeah,
literally. We had written our first album before we, even got the band back together for the most part. I mean, I think there are only a few songs on that first album that are new, and I think Infectious Alibis was written in 2020. I think Believing was written in 2020.
This Town
was like a reworking of several different songs into one, which is kind of funny. But yeah, other than that, like A Little Better, that was our song that we released back in 2010. The Cause, we like jammed that one back in 2010. Survive was all back from that time. I mean, Somewhere to Belong. I mean, we played a show where we played Somewhere to Belong back in 2010. So like Decade Mosaic, the whole concept of that album was just like this several different pieces from the past decade coming together to create a new piece of art, which is what a mosaic kind of is. So
Took us a long time to come up with that name.
yeah, and going back to,
like really did.
Yeah.
Because I'm decade something, decade this, decade that.
But going back to your question about the band name, so we've both always loved space. I love like Star Wars, and you know that was like one of my favorite things back in the day. And I've always been interested in like astronomy, space exploration, things of that nature, interstellar, you know. But
Shout out Matthew McConaughey.
shout out Chris Nolan. And also just this idea of exploration, not being kind of like pointing towards nautical and like seafaring and exploring. You know, we didn't want to be so, you know, bold to be like astronauts or whatever, or like space band.
Space band.
But honestly,
Echo.
Yeah, well, actually, Novanauts is no more. It's Space Band now.
But you know, I was in a band called Calvin Nova, which was a play on word. It was actually a duo first between me and Mason Lusk, and we were creating music without a name. And the keyboard that's behind me is a Yamaha Clavinova. And so I've had a Clavinova for the past 15 years, and we were using that through a bunch of guitar effects and pedals. And he was like, what about just like calling this project Calvin Nova? And it was really based off of the keyboard. It had nothing to do with space. It just had everything to do with the keyboard name. And as like an artist name, as if it would be somebody named Calvin Nova. And then when that band became an actual band and not just like a bunch of recordings from two dudes that were friends, we shortened it to Calvin Nova, one word. And then when I started Novanauts with Brett, it was a bunch of new Calvin Nova songs that we hadn't done yet to begin with. And I thought, you know, I kind of want to ode to that project and that kind of style, because it was a very similar style, but I want it to be something different, something more rock, something a little less experimental, a little more rooted in guitar and vocal. And so Novanauts kind of just sounded like a cool name. And we were just sitting there at Brett's parents' house, just thinking about what to call it. We had, you know, been watching some movies and talking about space, and just Novanauts just kind of rolls off the tongue. And people oftentimes ask us, they're like, Novanauts, what is Novanauts? And we've thought about changing the name many times to be something.
Don't.
Yeah.
It is a great name.
That's what we kind of tummy tested it, and we kind of went back and forth with the Novanauts, but at the end of the day, it's who we are. I think it's at this point, you know, it is, you know, all we got to tell is like it's Nauts, like Nauts.
Yeah, like
Yeah.
I say it's like supernova and astronauts, and then people get it, and then there's always the confusion on like, is it the Novanauts? Is it Novanauts? It's like, well, it's either. I mean, it's, you know, technically on all the records,
you use it.
Technically, like if you go into the publishing and all that stuff, it's Novanauts without any articles in front of it. But a lot of times people refer to us as the Novanauts, and that's totally appropriate as well. It's just, you know, it's like, is it
Novanaut
Beatles or the Beatles, or is it, you know? But it's, you know, that's where the name came from, and it's really stuck because it really embodies this friendship that Brett and I have creatively. And though the musical stylings may shift and morph, that kind of speaks to, you Novanauts are the new explorers, so to speak, and where we want to take our musical journey together. So,
Absolutely. Brett was mentioning medical school. Luke, I presume you're a doctor.
yes, yes.
What area of medicine?
So I'm currently in residency in general surgery. So I'm hoping to be a general GI surgeon and colorectal surgeon. I want to do. I'm finding colon cancer and rectal cancer and issues with the intestinal system to be very burdensome for patients, and the surgeries are also very technically challenging and interesting. So it's kind of like, to me, a very fulfilling surgical path. So I'm currently working towards having a career in colorectal surgery. But yeah, I'm in my fourth year of being a resident. I've done 2 clinical years, and I'm doing a bunch of years of research because I'm interested in going into academic surgery. And I'm just thankful for the opportunity to continue doing music while I'm pursuing that career path as well.
So. Very cool. Very cool. Yeah, I'm actually a former paramedic. So I did that for a number of years in various jurisdictions around Metro Atlanta. But and funny enough, about 7 years ago, I was actually diagnosed with diverticulitis and ended up having to have surgery unexpectedly on that. But I've done well with it for the past 7 years. Haven't had any further issues. So
good.
That's right up my my wheelhouse right there. So small world. I mean, yeah, it's as you pointed out, it can be very prevalent, and so. But speaking of the paramedic thing, another one of my interests is trauma surgery. And I think we spend about 40% of our time working at Grady in my residency program. And you ever worked there or had experience with people off there?
Well, I never worked for Grady, but I worked. I worked 911 up in North Fulton, up in the Roswell, Alpharetta area, and Sandy Springs for that matter. I was with Rural Metro Ambulance back in the day, and North Fulton used to go on diversion a lot. So when they would go on diversion, if we had anything significant, we were doing the Grady Shuffle. And, Alpharetta or Roswell to Grady is a bit of a haul when you've got a patient going down the flusher. So it's.
Okay. Yeah. And I live right next to St. Joseph's Hospital. And even getting from where I live to Grady on a busy afternoon is tough. But
oh, yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah. So I'm in the Emory program, and Emory has been super supportive of my musical journey as well.
Oh, that's cool.
And so, like, I can't say enough good things about, people in my program, the surgeons that I work with, the professors that I work with. Like, everyone's very supportive of us having a life outside of surgery, as well as being excellent surgeons and excellent doctors. They want us to be, well-rounded and connected with our community and with something outside of the hospital. And so they viewed this very positively. And the clip that you showed at Smith's Old Bar, about 70% of the people there were doctors, and
that's cool.
Memory in some form or fashion. So
it's like he would. I remember it's just cool because he's like that. Like, he was talking about them like they were rock stars, because they are in the medical community of Atlanta. Like, he's like, yeah, that's the head of this and the head of that, and they're here just like here to enjoy some rock music. Like, it was just really, really cool to see those two worlds kind of combine and merge, and and gel so well. Like people who you look as your mentors and stuff are like, oh my god, this is really cool. Like like we always knew Luke did music, but we didn't know Luke did music.
Yeah. Very cool. But what you were saying though, Luke, is so true. Having a life away from your primary thing and having outside interests makes you better at what your primary thing is.
Agreed.
So
Yeah. And Brett and I have always like had stuff going on, day to day. And we just get so refreshed and recharged by this. And we find it to be so fun that, it takes a lot of the pressure off. I mean, people put so much pressure on, oh, we gotta make it, or oh, like we're not getting this many, followers or that many, and yeah, all that stuff's well and good. And believe me, like I want this music to spread. I want people to come to the shows. I want to, grow our fan base, but I don't have to rely on that as like a business 100%. There are business aspects to it, but like it's an expression vehicle for me and my friendship primarily. And that in and of itself is refreshing for then facing, difficult job, day in and day out at the hospital, though that's also very fulfilling and gives me a lot of experiences that then inform what I'm feeling emotionally that come through in the music perhaps. And so you're very right. I think where people go into dangerous territory is when they get very tunnel visioned into what life or their activity needs to be. They're like, oh, I'm in a band. So, speaking for someone or a former version of myself, it's like, oh, I'm in a band. So I need to be making my full-time income from the band. I need to be, getting notoriety in the local scene. I need to have fans and blah, blah, blah. But focusing on that just, it keeps you kind of limited in a way. Though all those things are great. I love connecting with people, but
Yeah.
just like if I were to focus 100% on being in the hospital and being the absolute best, I want to be great. I want to be excellent. But, if that's all I do, then I'm going to be one dimensional.
Yeah,
absolutely.
and I agree. I think our society has, and we were talking about this the other day, like we want as many people as possible to listen to this music, and we're trying to do it as organically as possible because these trends that you see on social media and stuff, and I'm not downing them whatsoever, but what happens when you stop the trends?
Yep.
What happens to your fan base once you're no longer putting these quirky, awesome videos out, which I think they're awesome, but I think that is a tool to use to bring people in, but what gets them to stay? And I think that our focus is more of creating a product that makes them want to stay in the first place.
Mm-hmm.
And we don't focus so much on it. It's like our North Star is write songs that feel good to us and feel good to play live so that we can create a shared experience for those in this world that need it. And we've our biggest fear is and for us and for other bands is that they'll have all these trends and stuff, and then what happens once the trends die, or they stop doing this or that? We want longevity for these incredible bands in the scene, and I think it's all about nowadays. It's all about how many followers can we get as quickly as possible, but how about keeping those followers and keeping them interested? I think that's what you need to focus on first, is not the acquisition of numbers, but the acquisition of true fans. And that is through through relationship and community. And I think that that's where it all comes back to, is creating music for these spaces that already exist and bringing people together. I mean, it's what this world needs, is more togetherness and less of the division that we see so much in our world nowadays. We ain't gonna get nothing done unless we do it together. It's just that's just a fact. That's not a opinion.
Absolutely. Well,
you can put my name on that.
Okay, we'll do. So we're getting close to 9:30 now. So I know you guys have a show here in Atlanta, in Alpharetta, actually, on June the 8th. And you know, I'm hoping to actually get out for that and come see you guys.
That'd be great.
Yeah, that would be awesome. Yeah, it's Machete Fest, June 8th. I just want to give a quick shout out to it's at Joe's Bar and Grill, June 8th. And music starts at 3. So it's us, Over Anna, Myron 7000 Band, Nobody's Darlings.
Yep.
Rosetta, Half Knot, Antagonist Theory, Against the Fold, Smoochy Face, and Feather Machete.
And
nice.
Marie.
But I've actually had the bass player for Antagonist Theory on here several weeks ago.
Sweet.
Yeah, he's a good dude.
Nice.
So,
good. Looking forward to meeting all those souls.
Absolutely.
And then we have another show coming up in downtown Atlanta at the Inner Space, and that's going to be on June 21st, Friday, June the 21st, and that's going to be another fun one. We're going to be playing with a bunch of really cool bands, Dirty Holly, Gritters. There's the Mystical Hot Chocolate Endeavors, and there's one more, Great Wide Nothing. So those are going to be some fun folks to meet as well. And we'll be opening up the night on that show around 7. So that's going to be at the Inner Space on June 21st. It's going to be fun.
I've actually had the bassist from Great Wide Nothing, Daniel Graham, on here as well. They are also a phenomenal band, very proggy.
Awesome.
Good.
Yeah, that's going to be a very prog show, and it's going to be fun. I'm going to get to just enjoy.
Yeah, no, we were talking about, we're like, these bands are super proggy, and I'm ready for it.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, you know, we definitely, I've definitely got a lot more material here, and you know, I would love at some point in the not too distant future to get you two guys back on, because there's a lot more ground to cover. If you guys would be up for it at some point in the near future, I'd love to have part 2.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having us. I mean, this is, I'll be honest, I didn't think I would, like, not that I just didn't think I would have this much fun. I was, you know, when you just think about something, you're like, but I've had fun just sitting here hanging out with you guys. It's literally the thing we keep talking about. Like, it's just 3 dudes who love music hanging out. Like,
and that's really the vibe that I go for with these. You know, not an interview, just a chat, a conversation. So
I love it. I love it. Keep doing this. The world needs more of this.
Well, thank you. And like I said, thank both of you for your time. And this has been an absolute blast. Like I said, this is why I do this. I mean, I've, you guys have really given me I don't know if the term is maybe like a spiritual shot in the arm, just as far as really knowing why I'm doing this. This has just been awesome, and you guys have really blessed me tonight.
Well, thank you. That means a whole lot. I'm gonna keep that phrase. You may see that phrase pop up somewhere in the Novanauts lore. Spiritual shot in the arm. I love that.
Yeah, me too. I was like, I gotta write that down.
So thank you. We're just very grateful and glad that you came across us and reached out, and we're super pumped to see you again in the future.
Absolutely. And anyway, those of you that have been watching this live, thank you. Those of you that will be seeing this on replay, thank you for that. If you like what we've got going here, spread the word. And let's try to continue to grow this and get this as interactive and just good for music scenes around the country as we can. Because
100%.
that's the name of the game here, is just spreading the word about good music. So
absolutely.
Anyway, thank you guys, and we'll go ahead and call it a night. But this has just been awesome. So
yes, it has. Thank you so much for having us again.